Have you heard about Agenda 2030 or the New World Order? And if you have, what do you think about it?
It's probably conspiracy theory about a plan for elite to live in some kind of utopian state at the cost of like civilization and the average person.
I think with like people who go down conspiracy rabbit holes, they start believing one thing and then they get sucked into this online echo chamber and then they believe everything and then everything's a conspiracy theory.
We did an experiment with COVID and scared the hell out of everybody. Oh, good, you know, they do what they're told when they're frightened, so let's frighten them again. And that's what global warming is about.
People have been trying to fearmonger about so-called green tyranny for decades. So this idea that, you know, climate action is a way of stripping you of your freedoms and your liberties. But until quite recently, it felt like a bit of a sort of paper boogeyman, right? Because there was no evidence of green tyranny really happening in practice. During the pandemic, suddenly, billions of people around the world had a real lived example of their lives changing overnight. Freedom of movement, freedom of choice, you know, their safety. And that lived experience provides really fertile territory for conspiracy theories in other areas, because you can point to it and say, remember how bad things were during the pandemic? Ooh, that's just a taster of the things to come. It's going to be even worse when they start to deal with climate change. The perceived villains in this story are very often institutions, either operating at a national level or an international level. So the United Nations or the World Economic Forum or the European Union, these very big systems which are about bringing nation states or bringing governments together to try and tackle big problems. And then also you have some figures who have become sort of symbols or representatives of everything that is unequal about society. And in particular, Bill Gates and George Soros, so two very successful businessmen who have in turn become very prominent philanthropists and who are very interested in these big challenges like climate change. They are seen as being representative of this idea that kind of an elite class controls society. So that trauma, that collective trauma that we all went through, and the real legitimate fears and resentment that people have about that period of time has proven the kind of rocket fuel for mis and disinformation in the years since, unfortunately.
People don't need to be worried about the idea that there are new technologies and billionaires out there trying to make money out of climate change solutions which may not be necessary, anything like that. The fact remains they are necessary, and the individuals are willing to put themselves forward and try and drive change, positive action in this space is probably to be welcomed. There are plenty of people that have made a lot of money from, if you like, the traditional industries over the last 100 years, particularly out of fossil fuel, oil and gas transport as well. So it's kind of important to understand that there are big vested interests in preserving the status quo, but that won't be in any of the global interests of the people of this world, because ultimately the costs to us are going to increase quickly unless we take some urgent action now.
Generally speaking, people don't like change, and if we're going to take our climate change responsibility serious, then we need to see quite rapid change. It's no surprise to see there's increasing pushback against net zero, because if we're going to get real about climate change, then we're going to have to do something about it, and then doing something about it challenges vested interests when it comes to wealth and power. So in some respects it's not necessarily a bad thing, because it's demonstrating that politicians and wider society is beginning to respond, beginning to change in a way that is at least trying to throttle the impacts, the effects of continued extraction of coal, oil and gas.
It's really difficult when new policies or ideas come in like net zero that we're not familiar with, and they feel like they are restrictions on our lives and people telling us what to do. But again, the important thing is to consider the alternative is not everything staying as it is. Net zero is a thing because we are in a climate and ecological emergency, and that is going to have significant consequences. The consequences of that are the things that might restrict our freedoms, our ability to move around as we want, to live where we want, to eat where we want. Those are the things that are going to be affected by the impact of the climate crisis. So responding to that is actually about keeping those freedoms, keeping people being able to live the lives that they want to live, just in a world that is changing around us.
Conspiracy theories about net zero are wasting crucial time by making people focus on the wrong thing. Getting to net zero is going to bring massive changes to our lives, but climate change is going to bring much, much worse if we don't get on top of it.